In today's video, we're going to discuss the general outlook for the condominium market in the city of Toronto and the GTA at large for the year 2022. What I think, what you think, and some general consensuses out there. Let's get to it. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, back with another video for you guys here today. As always, feel free to find my contact information in the description box with regards to my Gmail, my Instagram, and of course my office information where you can get in touch with me with any questions you may have with regards to anything discussed in this video or general inquiries whatsoever in previous videos or market inquiries. Lastly, feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Your support in that regard is obviously greatly appreciated. But as I always say, to the dismay a lot of viewers out there, they're like, why do you always say this? But I like saying it. You're not obliged to do so. Anyways, let's get to the point of today's video, which is general market outlook for condominiums in the year 2022. Before New Year's, I put up a poll on my channel asking you guys, what is your general outlook, opinion on where the condominium market will be in 2022? What is your prediction, for a lack of a better word? And I provided 5 options. Options ranged from the most bullish of the bullish, the most optimistic possible, which I phrased somewhat informally as to the moon, and then the most pessimistic options, right? A crash. As many people have predicted both those options in the comments on my videos and in talking to me on a daily basis. And then in the middling options, I put a slightly optimistic option for people, you know, a appreciation of prices. Prices are going to go up, but by no means is it going to be, you know, a heightened, extraordinary appreciation of prices, just a slight appreciation. And then the neutral options, things will stay about the same. And then a slightly pessimistic slash bearish option, which is a dip, a slight correction, but by no means a crash, right? So I really try to give many options as possible so your responses can be as versatile and nuanced as possible. Of course, this is not an exact science. This is not exactly an academic survey, right? And it's not like we're accessing the largest number of people possible. The sample size will be small because my channel, relatively speaking, is, you know, quite small for a YouTube channel. So it's only about 40 people at the time of recording of this video who have responded. But nonetheless, I was surprised as to what the most popular response was, which by and far 47% of you said to the moon. And thereafter, the second most popular response in terms of your predictions was just it's going to get slightly hotter, with the third being a neutral state of affairs for the Toronto condominium market in 2022. 2 least selected options slash predictions were the more pessimistic slash bearish ones, which was a dip and a crash. And let me tell you why this surprised me. But before I do, quickly, this doesn't mean I'm rating the accuracy, in my professional opinion, of your opinions here, right, and predictions. I will get to my professional opinions later. So this is not me rating the accuracy. I was just surprised as to how many people were so optimistic and bullish on the condominium market for 2022. Once again, this is not to speak of whether your prediction in terms of your optimism is correct. Rather, it's more so to speak of my surprise at how many people shared this opinion. If you were to ask me what the consensus amongst my viewers would be, it would be more so neutral to slightly hotter, not so much to the moon as you see in the option there. And I would actually estimate more people would assume there was going to be a crash of some sorts and a dip in condominium prices. Those who are predicting a crash, although I do not share that opinion and that prediction for the future, I guess to see where they're coming from, more from a macro perspective, the ample money supply and the devaluation of asset classes in combination with a projected increase in interest rates, and simply put in different words, a projection of a bubble bursting. And that's more so with regards to the crash and the dip. Now, for those who have predicted that things are going to stay neutral, pretty much around the same price point, if it's going to be a little bit higher, it's going to be, inconsequential, right? Here I find more common ground with these people with regards to my professional opinion, although I don't agree with them generally speaking. I think there's definitely a legitimate argument to be made with regards to certain condominium types staying neutral. But since this question asks at a larger scale level, really the entire condominium market, right? Will that stay neutral? That is where I part ways. For those who are far more optimistic, and obviously by far the most popular options, here there is reason to believe that this optimism is not illegitimate and it's quite warranted. Now, this is everything staying equal, right? What I'm about to say. It's very difficult to predict the future and predict prices. If the worldwide event we're dealing with, which, you know, unfortunately I have to speak in code, but I think most people know what I'm speaking about. If that not persists, but actually gets worse in terms of conditions, then that's a different story right there. However, the market did, with condominiums, correct itself late 2020 into 2021 that I've chronicled ad nauseum on this channel. We have already seen a dip, a correction with regards to a buyer's market early on last year, and definitely the tail ends of 2020. And when condominiums showed strong recovery into a very hot market in March, a couple of weeks into April, therein things kind of sustained and things start to heat up again at the latter portions of the summer market. Of course, as you know, as a viewer of this channel, this is at a general level, right? I break down areas particularly where areas had separate trends, where they were hotter in the summer, got hotter in the fall. Different areas, of course, have different trends, but generally speaking, this was the course of the condominium market, where things into the end of year got very hot, particularly with regards to northern central Toronto, such as North York. That's where I saw the highest amount of price action, the highest amount of buyer competition. But of course, that applied to most of Toronto and most of York region. Things got very hot towards the end of the year. Well, as strong as the condominium market recovery was in 2021, particularly townhomes and detached, completely outpaced condominiums. And there is numbers to back that up as well. In November, as I covered in my TREB resale market report, which I do on a monthly basis, I go through the TREB resale market report as much as detail as possible. I chronicled the fact that the average sold price, right, of a detached home in the city of Toronto, for instance, let's take that first, was around $1.8 million. In the same month, November of 2020, in the city of Toronto, the average sold price of a condominium was $745,000. That's around $1 million to 1.1 difference in average sold price. That gap is quite large. But that gap is nothing particular to November. Let's look at some of the preceding months that I also chronicled in those market reports. In October, GTA at large, so not just Toronto, but the entirety of the greater Toronto area, from Peel, Mississauga, Brampton, to Durham, to Toronto, to York region, the average sold price of a condominium was $703,000. In the same period, in the same area, GTA, we were looking at $1.5 million, more particularly $1.54. The gap keeps getting larger and larger with regards to both the GTA level, the Toronto level, and the York region level. And once again, just to reiterate, if there's any confusion, this is the gap between average sold prices of detached and condominiums, not freehold and condominiums. There, if we look at the gap between freeholds and condominiums, clearly the gap would be much smaller. Yet nonetheless, in the same way, that gap would show us, it would illustrate to us a further widening on a monthly basis going into the end of 2021. So even though condominiums showed strong price action, clearly not at the level of detached and freehold properties. And what this indicates to us is that a lot of people, as has happened, right, thus far, but particularly this is a trend will continue in 2022, will be priced out of the freehold market, particularly with detached. And now that's why actually townhomes have outpaced semis, as I've made clear in the past, because a lot of people who are priced out of detached don't particularly want to go towards condominiums, do opt for townhomes over semis. That has become actually the preferred option. That's a different story, and that's a different video I've made in the past. The point here is there's very good reason to believe this trend will continue. Buyers will be priced out of detached and freeholds further and furthermore. Condominiums becoming the preferred option for a lot of first-time home buyers, in combination with another fact, which is low levels of inventory. Inventory right now at this current moment in time is at historical lows. We're talking about inventory for freehold, we're talking about inventory for condominiums, we're talking about inventory for condominium rentals, we're talking about inventory for freehold rentals, all inventory. If that is to sustain as well, there's very good reason to believe that in combination of the pricing out issue, if things are headed towards the right direction with the worldwide event, and the return to work for a lot of people, and inventory remaining relatively low, there's ample body of evidence to back up this optimistic zeal behind people's responses to this poll in terms of general market outlook. As a last point of matter, the different brokerages obviously do on an annual basis come out with their price predictions, wherein Royal LePage forecasted that in 2022 the median, not the average now, right, we're discussing a different metric here, the median sold price for a condominium in 2022 would increase about 12% in the greater Toronto area. And interestingly enough, this 12% appreciation projection is higher than their freehold portion, is higher than their freehold projection, indicating that Royal LePage is actually more optimistic in terms of rate of growth on condominiums than freeholds. And frankly speaking, I think what freehold properties are most at the risk of, not once again a correction or a dip, but more so a stunted growth, I guess, for lack of a better word, are the luxury types, right? The price points of 2.5 to 4 million, really, which are very popular, obviously, in the city of Toronto, but more particularly speaking in C7, C14, C2, C1, C8. If we take North York as just an example, we have a lot of 2.9, 3.5, 3.7, $4.25 million properties listed that, frankly, the class of people who can afford such properties are dwindling more and more, and the base of potential buyers becomes smaller and smaller. Now, once again, this is not to say that people won't be transacting in $4 million properties and they won't be growing. I myself have a listing on the market right now that's for $3.6 million. There are people seeing it, there is interest, it will appreciate, but that is at most risk of somewhat of, once again, not necessarily a dip, but stunted growth. Now, everything discussed in this video was at a general level. If you've worked with me or if you watched my previous videos, you know I break it down at a community to a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. There's certain areas within the Toronto condo market that I'm more optimistic on. There's certain areas that I'm less optimistic on. There are certain buildings that I think are undervalued assets. There's certain buildings that I think are overvalued. So once we break it down to the intricacies, it gets more complicated, and I'm happy to explicate that in the future, as I have done explained in the past in separate videos. But this was purely with regards to a general outlook, which most of you think is, quite optimistic and good looking for sellers, not so much good news for buyers. Anyways, that's Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate, Remax Realtron Realty. As always, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, stay tuned, and you can find my contact info in the description box.